Hello, good evening. Welcome to Spotlight. My name is Nong Falong and you're watching MX24 Television, your home for fun, fearless and factual content. It's the month of October and we're hammering strongly on the need for you to get checked. Get your breast checked at the nearest health facility for breast cancer. Remember, early detection saves lives. And remember, 1 in 1,000 men also get diagnosed with breast cancer. So please, men, while you're telling women to go get their breast checked, do the same for yourself. You just might be saving your life or the life of your neighbor if you tell them to go get checked. Now, the big question of the week, to pass or not to pass the LGBTQ plus bill. This particular bill has generated extensive conversation. Today we're going to be asking relevant questions to the right stakeholders. Now, we have visited this conversation in the past often as it has developed, and today we are going back to it again because there's an update. And what is the update? 15 renowned legal and academic and civil society professionals have filed a memorandum challenging the anti-gay legislation submitted to Parliament. In this memorandum, they are contending that the promotion of proper human sexual rights and Ghanaian Family Values Bill of 2021, which seeks to criminalize LGBTQ plus and adjacent activities. If you have been following, this is a bill that has been introduced, a private members bill by some members of Parliament. Now, these 15 renowned legal, academic and civil society professionals are saying that it is an impermissible invasion of the inviolability of human dignity. Now, to push this anti-LGBTQ plus bill, they are saying, will be to challenge Ghana's constitution and democracy. And as argued in their 18-page document, they have presented an 18-page argument, which you should make time to read. Now, the bill, as we know it, describes that people of the same sex who engage in sexual activity could spend up to 10 years in jail. So the question is to pass or not to pass the bill. There are various divides to this conversation, and we'll be examining both sides of the extremes. Before we get into that conversation, we have our guest, of course. But stay with us. We'll go for a quick break, and when we come back, we'll also be opening the phone lines much later in this conversation for you to tell us your opinion. Do stay. Hello, welcome back to Spotlight. I mentioned before we went on that break, there's a big question of the week, and it's simple. To pass or not to pass the LGBTQ plus bill? If you're on either side of the conversation, we'll be opening the phone lines much later, and feel free to join. I'll announce those lines much later in the conversation. We're being joined by Dr. Kojo Asante. He's Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at CDD. We also have Justice Abdullah. He's a private legal practitioner. He's also been on the program a few times. Also, Robert Akoto Amoafo. He's a human rights advocate. And Sheikh A. Ofosuhene, an Islamic scholar who's joining us on phone. We're also joined on Zoom by Mr. Mo. He's Communications Director of the LGBTQ plus rights of Ghana. So, gentlemen, welcome to Spotlight. Good evening. Thank you for giving us your time.
Good evening.
Right. Let me just go first to the legal practitioner who's with us, Justice Abdullah. Good evening, sir. Thank you for joining us on Spotlight. If you can hear me, please unmute. Hello, sir. Yes, I see you online, but for some reason it seems you cannot hear us. If you can hear us, please alert my producer so we can fix that sound issue there. But I mentioned we are also joined by Dr. Kojo Asante, who is Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at CDD, Robert Akoto Amoafo, who is a human rights advocate, and Sheikh A. Ofosuhene, who is an Islamic scholar. Also, Mr. Mo, Communications Director of LGBTQ Rights Rights of Ghana. So in the absence of Mr. Abdullah, is the line better now? Okay. Let me go to Dr. Kojo Asante. Hello, sir. Good evening. Thank you for joining us on Spotlight. Dr. Asante, can you hear me? Kindly unmute. I think your line is muted. Okay, it seems we are having some challenges there with the sound specifically. But what do you at home think? And what do the Ghanaian people think about this bill? Should the bill be passed? Should the bill not be passed? Which part of the conversation are you on? We went out earlier, we spoke to a section of Ghanaians, and this is what they had to say.
Because me say no, my woman ma, I na brema no go school. My says kada bia me ko bobusia. Na ma hwe me ba wo wie school a. Na so ye gay abebe de. Gay. Dabe. You don't want to na. You don't want to kwa. That means ewiase ne kwasa no no. Ewiase ne ko wie because I didn't na oba wo ho. Nyakopo oba say na ono be mantena na monwo. Fa me say gay no obetema wo akwala. No. But I bone I had time kwa ma yankasa kura mfa hokura side.
To be honest, I don't feel it's right because I don't see why a man and a man or a woman and a woman should have a marital relationship. About everything, it doesn't make sense to me. To take the whole society, if we should indulge this act, things in the future wouldn't be normal. Yeah, so I see it as something which, in a way, doesn't make sense to have that kind of culture in our society. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't really make sense. Yeah. So to have them say they identify as a man or a woman, it's a preference to me. I know it's a preference to them, but they shouldn't actually gang up on the rest of us to make us accept. If it's in the scope of human rights, yeah, they have the right, but what of the right of the next person who wouldn't want that in his or his confinement? Yeah.
Morally, it's sinful. You know, it's sinful. Why should you be attracted to the same sex? And I think it's not appropriate. It's sinful to us and God. I'm a Muslim and I really believe that this shouldn't be legalized in the country. And I think legalizing it in the country will be a very bad thing and it will affect most of us morally.
How will it affect you morally if somebody just wants their sexual preference to be accepted? And
I'm not being judgmental. But if God really wanted us to be attracted to the same sex, God would have created Adam and created another male for him to be together with. But he created Eve instead of a male, so they can procreate. Yes. So I really think it shouldn't be legalized.
Aside the fact that it's against religions, it's morally not right. Because I don't see dogs having the intercourse between the male and the male and the female and the female. So Why should one be classified or one be seen as a man when she's a woman? It doesn't make sense. You are a woman for natural sake, yeah? I'm a man for natural sake, so why should I change my identity to be a woman? It doesn't make sense, like for real, it doesn't.
Media, me no money adwin. Since your mama and man didn't cry my coinsa. So that's it. Into fine or more pay, some bay, but I saw money into Modia. Me, I'm telling them no money adwin, sir. Or Muma right or more canon. Ghana bands the winnie pabese 100, 90%, it went in on adwin. So there's a bad idea by ya, do one year adwin, and I said you to me. And we could parliament and use some point from a jatum. Almost or more right or mine Modia, but you're right in the
So there you have it. That's what Ghanaians think about the bill. Some Ghanaians, that's not an exhaustive representation of the opinion of Ghanaians, but you get a fair idea of it. Also today in Parliament, the Church of Pentecost presented a petition in support of the bill. We're told there are other religious groups that are doing similar. But let's take a short presentation of that earlier today.
Our concern is not about today, it's about the future. Today, when we let in this LGBTQ+, what is going to happen is that we are going to accept same-sex marriage, which the president says that it is never going to happen at his watch. But if he allows LGBT+ to start, it is true that it is never going to happen at his watch. By the time we get into same-sex marriage, the president will not be the president of the nation. I agree with him, but he should stop this. He should close the door at where it matters. And we are saying that he should close it now. This movement is an insult to the intelligence of God, the Creator. We are just trying to tell God that you didn't think enough. This is how it should have been. And if you have a society where there are no absolutes, soon there will be no law. And we have to be very careful. And our lawyers who are arguing for all this, the matter on the floor is not about rights, it's about morality. So the Church of Pentecost, with a population of 3,196,605, are supporting this bill that is before the floor of Parliament. We want to encourage our parliamentarians to argue and argue well, and then know that they are creations of God. They didn't come out of apes, and so they shouldn't use signs to behave. And the other creatures should not tell us how other creations to behave. Now, we have written 6 memos with 15,000 signatures. Our trustees have signed, all pastors and wives in this church have signed, even our students have signed. And so we want to present the 6 memos coming from our women, our men, the youth in the Church of Pentecost, the children in the Church of Pentecost, all workers in the Church of Pentecost, and of course our theologians.
Those were some members of the Church of Pentecost in Parliament earlier today presenting a petition in support of the bill. 15,000 signatures, they say, and 6 different memos. Now, we're going back to the lines where I mentioned earlier. We have Dr. Kojo Asante, Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at CDD. Also, Justice Abdullahi, who's a private legal practitioner. Both their lines were not too clear earlier. Hopefully, we've established connection now. Also, Robert Akoto Amoafo, who's a human rights advocate. Sheikh A. Ofosuhene, who is an Islamic scholar. Also, Mr. Mo, Communications Director of LGBTQ+ Rights Ghana. We're going to come to you at home shortly, much later in the conversation, and I will be giving you the phone line so you can call in and we can hear your opinion and let us know exactly which part of this conversation you hang on. Let me go to Mr. Justice Abdullahi, who's a private legal practitioner. Hello, sir. Can you hear me now?
Indeed, I can hear you.
Fantastic. The line wasn't clear earlier, but you have listened to, I'm sure, a lot of conversation on both sides of the argument, those for the bill, those against the bill. You've listened to Ghanaians, you listen to people who are completely indifferent. As a lawyer, is this an issue of human rights, or should we limit it to sexual preference, or is sexual preference even human rights?
Well, indeed, if we limit ourselves to the dichotomy of the question that you've asked, then unfortunately the argument will be in favor of the gay rights. However, I think it goes beyond that. This is not an issue of human rights at all. Neither is it an issue of sexual right or preferences. I think this is simply an issue of criminality, and that must be stamped out. It is not different from an armed robber advocating for his economic right to be respected, i.e. be allowed to rob other persons and take the best out of them. I don't think any country in the world, I don't think this issue has even gained that international momentum for even those Western countries that are pushing us to accept some of these things, have even welcomed it in their own jurisdictions. But that's not an issue for our discussions now at the moment. The issue before us is whether this conduct is criminal.
Dr. Abdullahi,
my response is an emphatic yes.
Which part of our laws criminalizes this?
Indeed, it has always been part of our Criminal Act, Offences Act, that any form of carnal knowledge is an offense within the Republic. And so anytime, anywhere that a person engages in sex that is not through the natural, known means of having sex, that person commits an offense. Now, what this act does, only to extend the ambit of the law, i.e. to include the advocacy of it and parents identifying themselves as criminals, if you want to call it, and also other persons who we may not see them engage in it, because really to be caught within the act, you should be seen to be having unnatural carnal knowledge. But what this new bill is seeking to do is to extend the ambit of the law to include advocates and all other persons and people who identify themselves, males who identify themselves as females or other way around, and all these other areas of the long list of letters called LGBTQRS+.
Counsel, does the law
which may not necessarily...
Does the law explicitly mention gay people or gay sex, if you'd call it?
No, the law makes it wider than even the term gay.
Okay.
The law mentions unnatural carnal knowledge, which is wider in scope than simply limiting yourself to gays.
But when it says unnatural and fails to define unnatural, doesn't that leave it very open to interpretation?
But that's the point I'm making, that the law is wider already for us. That's the whole point I'm making.
Okay.
But the challenge is with those who may not necessarily be found to be committing these offenses, but would identify themselves as one part of a criminal enterprise. And so what I'm saying is that this kind of bill seeks to extend the ambit of the law to include almost all those areas. And that is a positive part of this bill, which is why we must all support it, so that we completely stamp out this crime from our jurisdiction. And remember, this law has been with us for more than 60 years, and nobody has even questioned it. Nobody has ever said anywhere, including those who are presently advocating for the non-passage of this bill on the basis of human rights. They've never questioned the existence of this law that forbids unnatural carnal knowledge from happening in Ghana. And my point is that if they've not questioned that after more than 60 years of having that provision in our law, I can't just understand the basis for calling this particular bill a human rights issue. It doesn't add up to me.
Okay.
Unless the argument is that because the bill stretches too far wider than the existing law. If that is the argument, I think that's a conversation that we can have.
Right. Counsel, please stay on the line for me. Just quickly, I hope that wasn't you going off the line. Let me quickly go to the communications director of LGBTQ plus rights of Ghana. Hello, Mr. Mo. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. How are you doing?
I'm very well. You heard Justice Abdullahi there with his stance. Do you agree with the points he raised, that this is not a human rights issue, especially?
Oh, indeed, I heard what he said, and I respectfully disagree what he said because, with his logic, I think then we all should be arrested because we are all potential murderers and potential thieves
In
and
what way?
armed robbers. Because he's saying that simply identifying as a member of the queer community has to be criminalized. But the fact of the matter is that the code that he's referring to explicitly criminalizes an act, right? And I believe that in criminal law, I'm not a lawyer though, but I believe that criminal law, until you do the act, you are not a criminal, I believe. Because that's what I'm saying, that with his logic, we all should be arrested because potentially in the wrong situation, we can all be criminals. So what I am saying is that this bill is dangerous because it actually criminalizes identities but not acts. So I respectfully do not agree with Justice Abdullah.
Right. Let me keep you on hold there, and let me bring in Dr. Kojo Asante, who is the Director of Advocacy and Policy Engagement at CDD. Hello, sir. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening again.
Thank you so much for joining us. We've been trying to get you for a while.
I'm here.
Yes. Dr. Asante, now, from your angle, is this a human rights issue? Does it hold in that regard?
Thank you very much. So first of all, I think there's a lot of confusion as to what bill is currently in front of Parliament to be discussed. No LGBT person has gone to Parliament to say that they should legalize LGBT.
Okay.
Rather, a group of MPs have tabled a private members bill seeking to criminalize persons who are identified as LGBT.
True.
And seeking to criminalize anybody that associates with them or say anything about LGBT, or even seek to amend later on, if this law is passed, this bill, and many, many more. They even have gone further to articulate what they consider to be Ghanaian values and seek to criminalize anybody that seeks to undermine Ghanaian values. And hopefully, as we go along, I would refer you to some of these provisions.
Okay.
So when I listen to your Vox Pop, it's obvious that people are confused, thinking that, well, LGBT people have gone to Parliament, that they should
legalize,
approve same-sex marriage and all of that stuff. That is not the case.
Okay.
So now let me come to the fundamental point. The Constitution is our guiding principle in terms of how we relate in this geographical space called Ghana, this society that we have created. The Constitution gives basic fundamental human rights to all persons. It's not just Ghanaians. Anybody that lives in this republic are given those set of values. Now, and those values are not absolute, right? And they include sexual rights as well. And I'll refer Justice Abdullahi. Sometimes, when people say, oh, they are not human rights, and or because they don't have any express provision. Please read Article 33(5) of the Constitution. But the point is this: if you come and you are seeking to limit these rights, as I said, they are not absolute. you have to have a very serious public justification for it. Now, that justification that you are going to provide has to be necessary and reasonable in a democratic society. Has to be in pursuit of preventing some public harm, health, public morality, or any of those things that the Constitution provides a basis for. But remember, the litmus test is that it has to be necessary and reasonable. Now, where you make a distinction, and some justice talks about armed robbers, that this is the difference between armed robbers and LGBTQ, and that you cannot seek to criminalize them. You cannot separate a person's sexuality from himself. The only reason why armed robbers are a problem is because an armed robber interferes with the rights of others, including the right to life, the right to human dignity, if you harm the person. We have passed many, many laws to protect society on that basis. Somebody identifying as LGBTQ does not in any way harm another person, makes them unable to engage in any other activity that their basic fundamental rights are as granted under the Constitution. They can. It does not make you gay because they exist. It does not interfere with your economic activity or any other rights. So the proponents of this bill do not meet the public interest test. To seek to then deprive another person of their freedoms, and these are not just freedoms or one or two, this is the entire set of freedoms that we have. And this is the point that what we are saying and what we are arguing, and I listened to the Pentecost presentation, and they are talking about the numbers. This is not an election results petition or application. This is not about how many people want it. Because if that is what the Constitution guarantees, then minorities will have no rights under the Constitution. So I think we have to start from the premise that the Constitution guarantees protections. Basic. These are basic. As soon as you are born as a human being, these are basic. And nobody can take that away from you. But even if we want to take it away, it has to be to protect others. And so that is where we start from. And that's where we can have the debate about it. So it's not like people just dislike. If you dislike something, all the things we dislike, if we were to legislate it, as the Pentecost leader was saying, this is about morality. Well, if this is about morality, then we have no business in Parliament, because in Parliament it's about law and public policy. So this is where we come in and say that no, what we are doing is a very dangerous precedent. And there's so much in this legislation that for me offends everything that we have fought for under the Fourth Republic Constitution. And people do not, because people have not read it, and they are emotive about how they feel about LGBT, they are prepared to let everything go.
Are you saying this is not, this is, sorry, are you saying public sentiment is as a result of not fully understanding it?
Oh, just from the vox pop, I can tell. So I don't think you can deny that Ghanaians abhor LGBT activity. I don't think you can deny that. But to move from there to legislate, right, to then deprive that community of their rights under the Constitution, that is where I'm saying that you have not provided the public justification for it to criminalize, put people in jail because they identify with a different sexual orientation.
Right.
That for me is a very, very serious violation of the Constitution. And we can come and think of all many scenarios that when you apply this logic, you would then begin to see the problems you're going to create if you are going to still keep this society as inclusive.
Dr. Santi, I'll come back to you shortly. Let me include our other guests in the conversation. We have Robert Akoto Amoafo, who's a human rights advocate. Can you hear me, sir?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. We were progressing without you. I just wanted to come to you and find out, is it even possible to go against the sentiments of the majority? Because we see that majority of Ghanaians do not want LGBTQ plus activities. And we also see, even with the CDD Afrobarometer report, only 7% of Ghanaians were likely, sympathetic to that. Is it possible to go against the majority demand, wishes, sentiments?
Thank you very much. And I would like to take off from where Mr. Asante left it. Okay. And he stated that, of course, we are not a majoritarian country ruled by those kind of values that we are talking about. What we are talking about here, and the reason why I am here, is because of the human rights. Now, human rights is not based on people's sentiments, on people's feelings. These are principles that we have subscribed to as a country. We put it in the Constitution and we have guaranteed it to everyone. So if you read Article 12, Article 13, you would see that it's granted several times, saying everyone, every individual. So it's important that we do not deny certain people because of our moral beliefs, our traditional beliefs, but we ensure that what we have all agreed to, notwithstanding our religion, our moral, our culture, we have put together some principles that we have agreed to. Now, quickly, let me respond to some misconceptions that our legal professional here made. One, the law that you mentioned in our Criminal Offences Act is a colonial law. I hope that you are aware that this is a Victorian law that was picked up into our law and doesn't have any cultural value to our system. Now, this law, as you may be aware, is in over all the British colonies and that are in Africa. And
but it's still present, right? It's still in existence.
Yes, it's still in existence like it is with us, but to make it clear that a lot of people have made progress in abolishing the law and going even further to make laws to protect LGBT people in their country.
You think we should be doing the same? Do you think we should be abolishing it?
Of course. I mean, if a law is there that doesn't serve any purpose and rather people use it. So, like as the lawyer said, there's a law that law continuously harm people. I am a professional on the ground and I work with LGBT people. There is constant abuse of LGBT people because of the existence of the law that is unclear. So let me give you an example. Okay. Somebody is caught in is tricked through an app in a community and sent to maybe a particular community. Some group of a gang of guys get into this person, beat up this person and send this person to the police station. Now, the police who have not even read the law and do not understand the law, rather arrest the person who is accused of being gay and put behind bars. Now, is this law affecting people because it exists? Yes. Should it be abolished? Of course. Because at the end of the day, what we are talking about is how is the law protecting people? Is it rather harming people or protecting people? So our cause is simple. Let's ensure that whatever law we put in place are not harming people. If you look at LGBT people, who are they harming? Now, unless the proponents of this bill are clear and they're able to tell us that this is the harm that if two consenting adults in their home, in the privacy of their home, have whatever consensual sexual activity has affected anybody through science and research, then we can start a conversation. But at this point, whenever you have this conversation, we keep going back to culture, we keep going back to morality, which is not the basis of ruling a country, but the Constitution, as we have all established at this discussion.
Right. Let me bring in Justice Abdullahi again, because there have been quite a few arguments against the law, which was his premise. Now, Counsel, what do you say to the argument that the law in itself is flawed to begin with and should be abolished? Okay. I think I've lost... Counsel, can you hear me? Justice, can you hear me? Okay, I'm not getting hold of him online. I think we lost him on the line there, but let me just go to Sheikh A. Ofosuhene if you're with us. Sheikh, are you on the line?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much for staying. Welcome to Spotlight.
Thank you.
We haven't hosted you before. What is your position? You have also just listened to some arguments. Initially, Justice Abdullahi quoted was against the whole LGBTQ plus activities. He wanted it to be criminalized. He expected all of us to be on that side. There have been some arguments against it and the law which he referred to. What do you think?
Yes, you are welcome. I've listened to them, and this is the genesis is not of recent. And I listened to them. They are saying that let me use short word LGBTQ, the flag. They say that, and they started somewhere 2007. It's not Ghanaians who are saying we should enact a law against them. Things should be clear after they are coming in and introducing that to Ghana. In the days of President Kufuor, they wanted to go on something like a walk, a demonstration, do something to call the attention of Ghanaians. And the president said, no, the government did not allow that. So they shouldn't say it is Ghanaians or some people are now saying that we should enact a law against them. We should go straight to the point where it begins from. And the cases, and after that, in 2010, 2011, they popped in again. They came in and they were trying to say that they should be allowed. And the Ghanaians, churches, Muslims, Christians, and traditionalists, all Ghanaians, spoke against it, almost all of us. And we said, no, it is not a tradition, it is an anathema. We don't need it. So, through the argument, the so-called, or we may call, excuse my language, we say that the human rights lawyers always say that, even they were say that there's no law that bans them from doing that. And when even you quote what we are saying, that our natural this and that in the constitution, they say, no, as we are saying now, it is not a law. In 2011, when 2011, that's right, when President that is Professor Amnos spoke about it. Some of us, we agitated, we tried to say that they are saying there's no law that goes against them. So we should enact a law by God's grace. Now, Parliament is coming. You see, they are diverting for the attention of Ghanaians from the facts of the matter. They are the people pushing that. They want us, and even outsiders, government outside, we're talking like the president, then prime minister of Britain, came in and said that if Ghana does not allow, and Uganda does not allow that, then they will not support that. That's why President Atame said that he will not accept anything, restraints following something like something attached to that. You will never agree to that.
Sheikh, so you're saying you won't accept it. Which part exactly? Are you for or against the bill?
I am against it completely. That all along we've been speaking against. It's not our culture. Democracy is something that the people appreciate. People themselves agree upon. And we are Ghanaians, our tradition, all the tribes in Ghana, and
Sheikh, but the argument is that these are persons who have not harmed anyone in any way and who have not sought to go against anybody's consent.
In Ghana, when somebody wants to take his own life, is it somebody's life? Do we agree? Your own life. You want to take your life. It's not allowed. And we are saying it's not a culture. We don't need this here. I will say that if the person is saying, they will harm, even the teacher has done something, they will harm a lot of people. So people should be educated. It's not a tradition. Why would they force that on us? And even they are now arguing that why would Parliament bother itself on going to something of that sort? Why there are a lot of problems in Ghana? We said it long time.
Religiously, from an Islamic angle, are there any specific doctrines against this?
Exactly. You go to Quran chapter 15, you call it Surah Al-Hijr. You go to Quran chapter 15, 57 up to 77, 20 verses. The Almighty God abhorred as it is in the Bible. The Bible says Sodom and Gomorrah were destroyed because of that act. So homosexualism and all that. So all religion and Islam vehemently speaks against that. And not only Islam, we are talking about Ghana. Ghana, our tradition, I'm a team, thank God. And a Gonja, my father is Gonja, my mother, a team. All these traditions abhor it. It's against it. Why would they fall that on?